Hey YouTube land, this is Shalika Bethel. I also go by Lika Bethel, and this is, my first video for the I Am Still Mom page. Thank you for taking the time to come visit. I pray that whatever is posted here is helpful, that positive dialogue happens, that healing and support happens, and basically whatever you may need in your grieving process. Forgive my lisp. I just started wearing braces about a week ago and I'm not used to this. But getting back on the main topic, I Am Still Mom came about because almost 4 years back, I was pregnant with my first child. And knowing that there were people that were in my life that had lost babies in pregnancy, I never honestly thought it would happen to me. I never thought it would be my story. But unfortunately, with that pregnancy and then my next pregnancy, it became my story. And after now 4 years of grief, God has turned it into a purpose for my life to not only share my story, but to bring awareness and comfort to those who are going through what I've been through, have gone through, and are still struggling in their grief. And that's what I'm here for. So kind of going back to what I was saying, back in August 2015, I found out that I was pregnant. I had no idea. My husband and I had started trying, I believe it was March, I'd got off the birth control after being married a year, and we just were like, let's see what happens. I had just turned, how old was I? 2015, I had just turned 31. My husband had just turned 30, and we were like, let's give it a go. So August comes around. I never forget, it was actually August the 10th. I woke up to fix my husband's lunch because he worked a morning shift. Took a pregnancy test because the weekend prior, everybody kept asking us, are we pregnant? Are we planning to get pregnant? And we were just kind of like, okay. And the superstitious side of me was just like, let me take this test. So I took it on August 10th around 4 a.m., left the pregnancy test in the bathroom. I go make my husband's lunch. He comes out all solemn and emotional looking, and I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with this dude? And he shows me that I'm pregnant. Joyful and elated, first pregnancy, all you can think of is your future, your child's future, all that wonderful stuff. And no thought of loss ever crossed our minds. We slowly started letting people know because we were happy. We didn't believe in superstitions. Like most people say, hey, you need to wait till you're in your second trimester because anything can go wrong. Like that was never really a thought of ours. We were happy to be pregnant after only trying a few months, and we was ready to welcome the baby into the world. I had some little bit of bleeding around 5 or 6 weeks, got that checked out, heard my baby's heartbeat for the first time at the end of August, and was immediately smitten. The only thing that could have been an issue per se was that the baby's gestation was a little bit off from what the doctors predicted. We went on with that. The doctor said there was no concern as far as she could see, so we went on. I had subsequent appointments after that, no issues. We were expecting to have a little baby sometime in April. Per my last menstrual period, or LMP as they calculated, my baby was to be due on April 23rd. And being that that's my birth month, I was super excited. Everything was going to be great. So somewhere around week 15 based on my LMP, 14 based on what the baby had measured before, I started to feel a little weird. I'd gone to work. I finally let my coworkers, well, my coworkers kind of knew, but kind of let my whole team know that I was pregnant and that I was due in April, and everybody was excited for me. One of my coworkers, his wife was pregnant also. She was nearing the end of her pregnancy. So it was cool to be adding new babies to the team. So I told them that I was going to go home because we had a production issue to work on that night. And what I was going to do was just take a quick nap because I felt a little tired, felt a little off that day, and that I would get up and be ready to work from home. I get home, and my husband had welcomed me home with a Carolina Panthers lanyard because he'd been in North Carolina for a year. He's from Atlanta. He's a Falcons fan, and he was finally coming over to the Carolina Panthers side. So he bought me a lanyard. He bought me some Airhead Extremes. And at this point in our marriage, he was working a night shift. So he said, I love you. I'll see you later. He goes to work and I take a nap. I wake up from my nap and I notice that there's water running from my legs, and trying not to panic, I figured maybe it was just a lot of discharge. Sometimes in pregnancy you have a lot of discharge. So I went to the bathroom. There wasn't any blood or anything. But after sitting on the toilet for a little while, I heard a pop. At this point, I'm in a WhatsApp group with my church because we're fairly small and it was just easy to communicate that way. And I said, okay, something's strange going on. Adrian, my husband, is at work. I may need someone to come over. Something to that effect. I hear a second pop, and at this point, I believe I was on the phone with my pastor, and she was asking me questions, and she was like, do you see any blood? And at first I said no. And then I decided to get up. When I got up, I felt something really, really strange, and I knew that it wasn't normal. At that point, my bags were out, and my baby was kind of hanging between my legs, but not in my mind, not wanting to believe that was the case. I don't know all the things I told myself it could have been, but I immediately ran back to the toilet, sat down, told her what happened, wiped, and saw blood. So when I saw blood, I was like, okay. Not that the bags didn't indicate that something was serious, but by the time blood was an issue, I'm like, okay, I need to do something. She advised that I hang up and call 911. So I did that while some of my other church family was getting ready to come over. I call 911 and I tell them that I think that I'm having a miscarriage. I'm not sure. I'm 14 weeks pregnant. I need someone to come over. And I'm in my bathroom by myself, terrified. I advised them that I am at home, my door's locked, that they would need to have a maintenance person come and unlock my door because I am at this point terrified to get up off the toilet seat. I remember them, because I live on the edge of Raleigh and Durham, I remember them trying to decide who to dispatch to me. They decided Raleigh, and the ambulance came. I'm not sure how they got into the apartment. I assume that the maintenance guy came and let them in. But they came in. I got up off the toilet and they confirmed that it was, by their terms, a fetus, and that I had indeed miscarried. I went into shock, and I remember feeling really lightheaded, and I was like, oh my God, I don't feel right. And I guess at that point I passed out, and before I knew it, I was waking up to throwing up. They were trying to keep me calm, and they were like, I'm so sorry, Mrs. Bethel, this is indeed your child. We're gonna have to take you to the emergency room. They put my baby in a bag and they wheeled me down the steps. I stayed in a carriage house, which is basically an apartment with a garage on the bottom. So they had to wheel me down steps, put me in the ambulance, and I remember them asking me if I wanted any pain medicine, and that they would give me an IV through my hand. I'm not a fan of IVs in my hand, and at that point, I didn't feel enough pain for them to do so, so I asked them not to. They get me to the hospital in Cary, North Carolina, and they get me in the emergency room. The emergency room doctor, I was not a fan of. His bedside manner was not very great. And my husband, they were able to get up with my husband, and he meets me there. They did confirm that was a baby, and that they had the baby, and that their main goal was to take care of me and get the placenta out. When you are that early in pregnancy, your body isn't always on board with releasing the placenta because you're only, at this point, 3 months pregnant. Placentas aren't normally discharged, for lack of better words, at that age or at that gestation. So he pokes and prods, and at this point is when I started to feel pain. He pokes and prods, unsuccessful at getting the placenta out. My OB comes, and she was a lot nicer and gentler with it, but it still wasn't coming out. And my husband and I were also not just dealing with that, but dealing with, okay, do we see the baby? Do we not see the baby? We're having to make all these decisions fast. Do you want to send your baby to a funeral home? But at that gestation, most funeral homes don't take babies. It was just a lot. So we made the tough decision not to see our baby. And it is one decision that I regret to this day. But I try to not allow it to um, not allow it to get the best of me, but we decided no. And the reason we decided no was, aside from all the trauma that I was dealing with in the emergency room, my last memory of my baby before I knew it was over, the pregnancy, was my baby hanging from my leg and my baby being put in a bag. And because of how hard that is to process mentally, I was afraid that if I saw my baby, that would only add to my current trauma. So I didn't. After we made that decision, they said, Mr. and Mrs. Bethel, we're having a hard time getting the placenta out. We're going to give you a D&E. D&E is dilate and evacuate. I lose the term, but basically it's similar to a D&C, where they go in and they dilate your cervix and they clean the rest of the conception material. This process is also similar to an abortion, but the difference is the baby's already out. You're just getting the placenta out. They did that, and maybe an hour or two later, I woke up and they discharged me. My world was shattered, rocked to the core. Was not sure what to do, what to think, how to heal, how to live, how to even breathe. I remember, like, the first couple of days, especially that first night, I could not go to the bathroom by myself. I legit had to have my husband take me to the bathroom. I would not go to the bathroom if he was not home. I would wait till he was home. Thankfully, first 2 days he was with me, but I would wait till he was home and I would have him take me to the bathroom. The beautiful thing that came out of that was how we decided to make it a little easier. Was we took the prenatal vitamin bottle that I'd used while I was pregnant and put roses in it, and we hung up all of our babies' ultrasounds over the toilet. And that was it was weird to other people. Like, my mom found it strange, but that was a way for me to find a little bit of peace in getting to the restroom and just being okay. So I did that. And it actually is a tradition that we carry to every house that we live, because we've moved. Well, we've only moved once, but aside from that, that's how part of how we remember that baby. Fast forward to I think it was my 3-week checkup. I asked my OB, did she know what the sex of my baby was? Because I was 14 weeks pregnant, so I didn't know. Could they confirm what the actual gestation was? And she was a little not too forthcoming with the answer. She would respond, well, it was somewhere between 12 and 14 weeks. And I freaked out, like, oh my God, my baby was dead for 2 weeks and I didn't know. Like, what kind of horrible person am I? And I asked her what the sex was. She couldn't tell me, and I was really, really frustrated. The only thing, and a lot of doctors do this, the only thing she could tell me is, when you get pregnant next time, we will give you some genetic testing and just kind of pinpoint any issues early in pregnancy that we can. I recorded this conversation with her and said, okay. 3 weeks later, after me and my husband had decided to name our baby Amara because we thought that maybe we had a girl, feeling unsettled in my heart and my spirit, I emailed my doctor in the patient portal. You know how a lot of hospitals have patient portals now, or medical centers, they have patient portals now. I emailed her and I asked for definitive answers. What was the gestation? What was the sex? I'm trying to find some type of closure so I can heal. This time she was more forthcoming, and her response was to the tune of, you were approximately 14 weeks pregnant based on the gestation of the baby, and based on the genitalia, it looks that the fetus was male. Imagine naming your baby and finding out that the sex was not the same sex that you named your baby. I was immediately distraught, but I went into mom mode and I talked to my husband and I said, babe, we had a little boy. What do we name him? And I could remember feeling like this name has to mean something. Every child I have, whether they live or not, their names have to mean something. And because Amara meant love, I thought, okay, maybe Amari means the same thing, but I decided to look it up to confirm because I'm one of those type people. And I found out that Amari meant strength. And I was like, wow. I told my husband, I said, the strongest I felt in my life was the day I lost our baby, the day I lost him. So we named him Amari, which means strength. Shane, after my brother. We just changed the spelling. And Bethel. The cool thing about Amari's name is all of his names had meaning. His middle name meant God is gracious. Bethel, as you might know from Genesis, means the house of God. So just those three names were just so powerful, and it helped us imagine what type of person he would have or could have been. That happened. So I lost him actually December 29th, not December, excuse me. I lost him October 29th, 2015. By December, we actually found out what his sex was and we named him. Moving into 2016, you know, grief is a mug. And a lot of that time was blurry, but I remember being my most honest and truthful self. And I learned that when you lose a child before the child had a chance to live, people a lot of times discount that child as if they weren't important, as if they weren't a real life. So I spent a lot of time like defending that, like, no, my child matters. And I remember like reading up on it and finding different resources. But I felt in my soul like I just have to get pregnant again. This is the only way I'm going to get over this. So in the midst of all my grieving and my husband's grieving, we decided 2016, we're going to give this thing a try again. We got married February 14th, 2014. I know, Valentine's Day, very cliche. So we decided our second anniversary, we were gonna have a baby. We were gonna get pregnant. Unfortunately, we didn't get pregnant in February. We actually got pregnant in March, and April rolls around. Amari's due date month, my birth month, and literally a week after my birthday, I find out I'm pregnant. I'm happy and scared. I'm confused. I'm not sure how to feel. And because I've had a loss, I wasn't certain if I should be excited because I had already been a part of the club where pregnancies for me don't end in a happy, healthy baby. But we decided to move forward. My husband was elated. At this point, we were planning a memorial of sorts for Amari just to help us with closure. And since his due date was April 23rd, we were going to have it on that day. So, hadn't really told a lot of people I was pregnant at this point. I kind of just kept it to myself. I contact my OB. And remember, I told you I recorded the conversation that we had where she said we would have the genetic testing. Well, no one had recollection that that happened. So being frustrated and just wanting to have people listen to me and remember the things they promised me, a friend of mine referred me to a different OB practice. So I called them and let them know I was pregnant. They gave me an initial OB appointment, and we went from there. April 23rd came around. We had Amari's party. It was beautiful. Even the skeptics thought that it was beautiful. Like, even the people, like, no, my parents, my husband's parents, my mom had lost the baby before, but having me and my brother, she was so far removed from it. Sometimes she wasn't quite sure how to respond to us, but my parents, my husband's parents, were super supportive. They were there. Our closest friends were there. And we released 14 balloons, 14 blue balloons, symbolizing the 14 weeks of his life that was in my stomach. And we told everyone we were pregnant. We didn't want to tell everyone, but my husband was super excited. I didn't want to take that from him. So we told everyone we were pregnant. Everyone was excited. Everybody just knew that this was our second chance. We knew it. It was just that. It was our second chance. That night, from working hard all day and not really taking care of myself, I felt a little faint, went to the emergency room. They confirmed that I was indeed pregnant. I already knew that. And that my HCG levels were super high, which was something in my first pregnancy that they weren't as high. They weren't nowhere near as high. So we were feeling really, really confident that this pregnancy was going well. Before my initial OB appointment with my new practice, I started to bleed like I did in my first pregnancy. So they brought me in and did an ultrasound. Baby had a heartbeat at, I think it was 6 or 7 weeks. And I was super excited, super elated, feeling really confident that everything was going to be okay. We get to my first OB appointment. Baby is still doing good, waving what seemed to be his hands. I don't know. It was just beautiful to see. And as a new patient, they took my concerns seriously and said, okay, we'll give you some genetic testing. The testing they gave me starts with the N. I think it's a nucleal test, where basically they check your blood they draw your blood, they check that for abnormalities, and they also give you an ultrasound at 12 weeks of your baby. And in that ultrasound, they're paying close attention to your baby's neck to look for abnormalities. Week 12 came, and we saw the most amazing pictures. Baby was moving, doing fine, happy. Well, I think he might have had an attitude, even though at that point I didn't know he was a he. I found out later he was a he. Think he might have had an attitude like, you know how babies are like, ew, why are you bothering me? That was my child. And when the ultrasound tech was doing, when she was doing her pictures, she said, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Bethel, it's too early to say, but I really think you guys should come up with some more boy names. And I was like, no way. And then she shows us the picture. And I had been reading about nubs. I had read that whether it's a boy or girl, they have a nub until about 12 to 14 weeks. So that's why you really can't tell the sex until after 14 weeks unless you've had some type of genetic testing. And I was like, no way, it's too early. But when I looked at it, it definitely looked like a penis. Definitely not a vagina or a potential vagina. It was definitely a boy. So I'm like, oh crap, we got to come up with a boy name again. And all I had was one girl name that I've had since 2011 and that I'm not letting up on. So I told my husband, so babe, I think we need to come up with girl name on your boy names. I pray about it. And that night I had a dream that God told me to name my child Sunshine. Now, being the practical girl that I am, Sunshine Bethel just did not ring to me. So I prayed about it a little bit more. And I'm like, what does this mean? I looked up names. I said, okay, I feel like God is telling me that this child is going to be light. So let me look up names that mean light. So I came across Aiden. And I was like, what does Aiden mean? I looked up Aiden, and